Just when you think Mashle couldn't get any better, you then have two amazing fights in this episode. I mean, really, there's three technically, but the one is such a beatdown that you can't even really consider it, because when Rayne, the Divine Visionary, aka Finn's brother, comes in, wipes the floor with this fool, that was just... it was beautiful. But the almost like test, which is pretty much a fight going up against Mash and seeing his muscle magic at work, to even having Dot pop the hell off once again, and just, you know, that glowing mark showing that his emotions are fired up. I mean, the fact that you can go up against this crazy girl who's like, you have to love me, you have to spoil me, daddy says so, and he gives such a warning shot that she immediately wants to switch sides, that's how you know you got a pretty badass Mashle episode on your hands. Now, full live reaction episode 10 is available on my Patreon. If you do want to see my full uncut thoughts as I watch today's episode, you can head on over there and consider supporting. This was a great episode. It was badass, full of action, creative fights, but most importantly, it had that Mashle humor that we know and love. First things first, I do want to talk about Rayne, the Divine Visionary, because initially, building up throughout this fight, you start 2v2, one dips and says, love, take care of these two, you should be able to do it. And very quickly, after our boy pretty much gets nerfed after getting his power up, because obviously, had he not got wounded there, you would assume Dot would have continued fighting and potentially even beaten the skull staff wielding lunatic. But what they ended up doing was he takes a blow for Finn, who basically is still cowering, and I thought what they were trying to do was build up the Finn kind of standing his ground and maybe almost growing a pair, kind of doing this big heroic moment, and instead they bring in his brother. So obviously over time he'll do something crazy, but right now he's still in that kind of cowardly role, which obviously eventually you would assume he would break out of. But by introducing his brother, who is a badass, immediately gave me some Fate vibes with Gilgamesh when he starts summoning all the blades around. I mean, that initial shot when he summons one blade and just skewers that fool, I mean, that's badass, and you say, okay, that's intense, he seems like he knows what he's doing, but the thing that really stood out to me was how he gave no shits. He just continued to beat this fool down senseless because, well, he's a bad guy, we need answers, am I gonna treat him nicely? No, he kicks the boy's ribs in I don't even know how many times. I would be shocked if he wasn't in a full body cast by the time he gets thrown into the ER room, because he gave no shits whatsoever, and honestly, I respect that. He doesn't seem like a scumbag whatsoever. He seems like he's the type of guy who, if you're on his side and you're a good person, he'll try to protect you and he'll respect you and say, you know, he'll give you the advice, seen by how he talked to Mash, saying, if you have no magic, you stand no chance. But in terms of his enemies, he has no mercy. He treats them as, you're the scum of the earth, you decide to fight on the wrong side, I'm going to treat you like absolute garbage, because he knows they wouldn't treat him right if, you know, the roles were reversed. And honestly, I find that to be a pretty refreshing character, all things considered. And when you see him go up against Mash, because he doesn't really know who he's fighting, right? He's got this like little spider that's chilling and apparently can read magic. Straight zeros, because of course Mash would have no magical abilities, but I love how Mash continues to lie, like, of course I have magic. Catches a sword like that, he looks like he gets skewered at one moment and he built a throne out of the swords, but the icing on the cake was when he starts playing baseball and just like is bunting the swords away. This is why I love Mashle, man, because I feel like the punchline when the show eventually ends and Mash probably becomes a divine visionary is that everyone's gonna collectively understand he has no magic, that this boy is pure muscle, but they're just going to go along with the lie because Mash is Mash, and they're just going to say, yes, you're muscle magic, of course. They're just going to know he's damn strong, but Mash will just be convinced that everyone believes in the lie that he's selling because, I mean, he knows what he needs to do, even if he does forget it from time to time. But I think this pairing is really interesting because we have the threat of whoever opens up the door basically has a half hour before they turn to stone. Now, should Mash turn to stone, my assumption was his muscles would flex and the stone would crack, but even if that's not the case, I mean, I feel like between either Divine Visionary, Rayne, or Mash himself, one of them has to turn to stone at some point during this fight, but if not, I guess we'll see where it goes, and I trust in Mash, it will do whatever it wants, and it will obviously be amazing. But this was a very fun episode because it's really nice seeing the characters grow from their initial starting points, which were all fun to begin with. Finn's the only one currently that feels like he's underdeveloped, but these are the types of characters that take the longest usually to start propelling, so that's not me criticizing saying, oh, worst character. I'm just saying, like, I'm waiting for Finn's moment whenever it does pop up, right? And in terms of Dot, when you look at Dot, you know, especially with that flashback as a kid, pretty much always getting picked on, oh, that's your new broom, switch it with me, sister comes in, smacks those fools around, says, leave my brother alone. And I love how it ties together with, like, looking at once in a lifetime, you might meet that blood bond that is going to be there for you, that will always be there for you and look after you. And considering what Mash did do during that whole SmackDown a few episodes back, I mean, it's completely understandable why Dot would look at someone like Mash as being just that, and how he needs to be the exact same for someone like Finn, who's basically, he's gonna get killed if he doesn't do anything. I love the fact that because Mashle works with a simplistic magic system at face value, you know, a few different types of spells per person, what ends up happening is all of those spells, the impact and the creativity, it really lends itself so that this author is able to do such fun little tweaks to the spells, like the way they'll angle these spell launches like this big mad explosion spell, and just these little moments add to such a flavor that on paper it seems basic, but every time I watch a magical fight in Mashle, I come out saying I really find that it was actually rather complex, and sometimes simplistic can be better, and I think that even goes hand to hand with the animation. They don't go extra extraordinary with the magical spells, but they have a level of impact, whether it's a blade crushing a fool's ribcage because it got launched at light speed, to these explosions and how they'll burn people to a crisp, or just the impact that these individual spells will have. Like, look at love spells as an example, right? Basically, this tornado, it's a simplistic animation style, but you really did feel like our boy was kind of like trapped and was losing his breath because there was no oxygen and the speed of the wind and everything. It was really nice. Now, speaking of love, she was a character, to put it nicely. I mean, not the most loyal of people, basically follows whoever she thinks is strong enough, and as soon as you see that, like, oh shit, we gotta go up against a divine visionary, she takes off that robe and says, yep, I'm not a part of it anymore. And honestly, it was pretty funny. Personality-wise, insane, be gone is all I'm saying. But in terms of great VA casting, because it almost felt like Jekyll and Hyde, this like adorable chibi, call me pretty, call me cute, to then die scum at a moment's notice. It was a pretty fun fight, but really it's when Divine Visionary comes in and then everything that happens afterwards where it really starts popping off. But Dot did steal the show up until that point because you just feel proud at the multiple moments, especially given that just a few episodes back he was getting impaled and being treated as disposable garbage, and now look at him, man. His explosion magic is absolutely top tier. And while it may be debatable whether he actually does have a fiance in Lemon at all, it's nice to see that he's a loyal guy, man. He refuses, even though he's like, you're definitely my type, but I gotta be loyal to my heart, man. It's just, I like it, man. The cast of characters is fantastic. The action is top tier. They're creative with a simplistic magic system that makes itself feel more complex, and I'm here for it. Let me know what you thought though down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you get notified when I upload more Mashle on the channel, and as I mentioned, full live reaction to this wonderful episode is available on my Patreon. And while you're there, you can also get a video shoutout like Michael Barnes, Patrick, Saris, and T Greeny1 are getting today, so I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.